Hi, my name's Anna Rose. I'm the National Manager of Earth Hour in Australia. So I got involved in environmental campaigning when I was in high school. I used to go surfing before school and I would see a lot of coal ships on the horizon. And so I started to think about the pollution that we were emitting into the atmosphere. But for me, it really changed when the drought affected northwest New South Wales, because my mum's family were farmers and I saw the impacts of the drought on my grandparents' farm, on my uncle's farm, and that was at the same time that I was learning about climate change in school. So for me, those things kind of connected when I was about 14, thinking about what we were doing to our planet and the effects, not just on polar bears and turtles and things that were far away from where I lived, but on really practical things like our food security. Well, I think like many people, as a kid I cared about the environment and I wanted to do something, but I didn't know where to start. And my first thing was just to set up a little environment group at my school. We set up recycling, composting, planted native vegetation, and then were involved in a campaign to help stop a mine that was proposed 40 minutes north of our school. And that was a successful campaign. And it taught me a really important lesson, which is that in Australia, change can come from the bottom up. We don't always have to have change from the top down. I think that's what Earth Hour is about, this community movement of people saying, you know what, no one can do everything, but everyone can do something. So Earth Hour is an incredible movement of people in Australia and around the world. It started in Sydney 8 years ago and it's now reached the citizens of 152 countries, 7,001 cities around the world. In Australia this year, we're relaunching Earth Hour. It's really exciting. We have a plan to focus the enormous power of Earth Hour on protecting our Great Barrier Reef from the impacts of climate change. And we're also turning Earth Hour from a moment that happens once a year into a year-round movement of people who are doing things at the local level, at the federal level, to really make progress on climate change. There's a small number of Australians who still don't accept the science of climate change. And I say to them, well, the risks are so great that to not act would be really irresponsible. And many people in Australia insure their homes. And at the end of the year, if their home didn't burn down, you don't get to the end of the year and say, oh, no, my house didn't burn down, I shouldn't have insured it. We think that if the risk is great enough, it's worth taking preventative action. And it's the same with climate change. Even for the small number of people who don't accept climate science, I think many people can still understand that the risks are so great that we should take preventative action, and that there's really so many benefits to taking action on climate change, not just cutting carbon pollution, but when we move away from fossil fuels and towards renewable energy, we create more jobs in renewable energy, we start thinking about our economy past the mining boom, we clean up our air, which is meaning healthier communities. I grew up in Newcastle, which is a coal community, and the health impacts, the respiratory illness, the asthma, those things we can fix when we move away from renewable energy. So it really is important that we do transition away from fossil fuels and towards renewables for so many reasons. Climate science is the most urgent, but it has other benefits as well. Some of the experiences that I've been able to have going down to Antarctica, seeing the impacts of climate change down there, going to the United Nations Climate Conference and meeting world leaders and hearing some really moving stories from people in the Pacific Islands, it has really opened my eyes to the fact that climate change is defining what the future of the world is going to be like, and it is up to us to do something about it now. We're the last generation that gets to have that chance, which is a huge responsibility but also a huge opportunity. Women in Australia and around the world are really taking a leadership role in tackling climate change, both at a personal level in terms of the consumer choices that they make, at a community level when they're influencing their politicians and thinking about the future, of our children, and also at an international level. Some of the people doing the most groundbreaking and inspiring work on climate change are people like Mary Robinson, people like Helen Clark, former female heads of state who have now taken climate change as a major focus of their life's work and are driving significant progress in their countries and at an international level. I meet a lot of young women who are very passionate about climate change and who are leading transformational change in their communities in Australia and around the world. And one thing I always say to them when they ask me for advice is, remember what Eleanor Roosevelt said, do one thing every day that scares you. And that's a motto that I've taken. This field of work of climate change, it can be really challenging, it can be overwhelming, it can feel really depressing at times, but if we're doing one thing every day that we think is going to change the odds of solving climate change and challenging ourselves to be better and to help make the world a better place, then it gives me faith that we can solve it. I love International Women's Day because it is a day where we have the opportunity to reflect on the progress that women have made and also to reflect on the progress we still have to make. And that's not just in the area of climate change and the environment, but all of the things that affect women in Australia and around the world. So for me, it's a really important day to remember why our grandmothers fought for us to have the freedoms that we have today, and also how much responsibility we have to future generations of women and of men to make the world a better place for them.